Everyone has moments in life they can't just stop thinking about. They can be embarrassing things, like that one time you face planted in front of a group of teenagers, or something amazing like the first time you hosted your family for the holidays. And on Baby, This is Keke Palmer, hosted by me, Keke Palmer, and presented by BMW, we know to savor the good memories and let go of the bad. And one thing everyone remembers fondly is their first time behind the wheel of a BMW. So come join me and BMW this summer as we explore pop culture moments and topics you just can't stop thinking about on Baby, This is Keke Palmer, sponsored by BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Zach Lamplugh, the director of the clickbait mockumentary 15 Things You Didn't Know About Bigfoot, Number 1 Will Blow Your Mind, aka the best film title ever in existence. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So before we do get into awesome title, can you take us back to the beginning? How did you get introduced to horror?
Oh, man, definitely through other people's parents. Definitely through like having to go to friends' households and stuff like that. Because I was actually, so I've been asked recently a few times like about horror movies, you know, from when I was a kid and stuff. And I was trying to ask my mom about it for this podcast. I was like, was there anything that specifically like kept me up all night that I'm forgetting or something? And we started just talking about horror movies, and she was like, what was the one that she said? She was like, oh yeah, horror movies like Shawshank Redemption. And I was like, what? Yeah, I was like, I think you file that under like American classics. Yeah, that's up there with like Old Yeller. It's not really a horror movie. Yeah, everything she said was like that. Like she was like, oh, well, I remember watching things like The Green Mile, and I was like, I don't know what's wrong with you, but so anyway, yeah, so yeah. Then when I started thinking about it, I was like, yeah, we never really had, or just like she wouldn't allow it. You know what I mean? Like she wouldn't let us have any of that. But sleepovers and stuff, like hanging out at my friend's house, we got to actually, you know, their parents would like let us rent horror movies and stuff like that.
Okay, but slumber parties are great because they can introduce you to movies that your parents might not let you watch. So I can relate to that completely. Do you remember any of the films that you might have been introduced to?
Oh man, some of them were like classics, and some of them were like not. I remember watching The Hills Have Eyes. That was like
which
really,
one?
The original one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember that was like really, really. See, here's what's nuts about like these memories from when you're a kid is like sometimes the like trashier ones are actually more scarring or more like they were the ones that you couldn't sleep after or something, you know, like they were more haunting, and then later when you go back and watch them as an adult, you're like, that movie doesn't really hold up. Like,
oh yeah,
Hills Have Eyes. Well, I guess the one I'm thinking of too is Jeepers Creepers.
Oh yeah,
that one. Yeah, I remember that one being like, we can't even finish it. It's so scary, and now it's like. I actually haven't seen it in a long time, but I do remember revisiting that when I was like in my mid-20s and being like, this doesn't really hold up. Does it hold up?
And the director.
Am I wrong?
No, the director's an absolute piece of pedophilic trash.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a terrible human being. Yeah, he's terrible. But also the movie isn't that good anyway. So.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so I know that you said that your mom didn't really allow a lot of horror movies, but do you remember any like favorites you had growing up?
Man, definitely. All right, so Thinner was one, which we were allowed to watch that because it was like Stephen King, I guess.
Oh, interesting.
I'm noticing a Stephen King connection here because you mentioned Shawshank and The Green Mile and now Thinner.
Yeah.
So we were allowed to watch Thinner, and that one was really, really neat. I guess, Stephen King is a great author. All his stuff has like that particular movie had kind of like a monkey paw element to it,
Yeah.
And it has some really cool, like, creepy claymation effects, doesn't it? Am I wrong? It definitely has, like, gory effects where he's, like, spitting his guts up. But is any of that, like... That might just be rubber.
It's been so long since I've seen that movie. All I remember is that it was a Tom Holland film. That's, like, literally all I remember about it. That and the cover. Yeah.
But... Yeah, so I remember the rubber foam and claymation stuff just is spookier. You know what I mean? Or like when you're a kid, at least.
Yeah, it's that kind of that visual style, I think, that seems to or the more surreal nature of it kind of, I think is what a lot of times we've noticed kind of sticks in kids' minds for sure.
I just always remember when I'm thinking about these movies, like, because Jaws and Poltergeist are two that really like destroyed me as a kid. And it's like, I rewatched them and I'm like, this is not how I remember them at all. I just remember them as like concepts, as like blurs and colors and stuff. So it's like, I don't really know what's happening. I just have those terrifying, weird images in my head. And then you watch it and you almost laugh at Poltergeist. Like, not laugh, because Poltergeist is still pretty fucking scary. But like the effects are kind of funny and like the jelly coming off the guy's face. But like as a kid, you don't know the difference. And like that kind of like blurred image is just kind of cemented in your brain as something that is like the pinnacle of fear.
No, I watched Poltergeist recently, and like it's still a good movie. Like all the characters make sense, and everything is intriguing and everything like that. But the score, especially, I was like, ooh, just like so cheesy, so Spielbergy,
Yeah,
so Spielbergy, so much Save the Family, Spielberg.
Yeah. It's the parts where you're like, oh, it's the Goonies. Okay, cool.
But what other movie were you going to mention?
Oh, what was I going to say? I think I was going to say Beetlejuice.
Oh my god!
Yeah, Beetlejuice had the creepy like claymation worms and all that business.
Oh my god! Yes.
Yeah,
that movie. That movie, I think, has shaped me as a child. Beetlejuice
when they like stretch their heads out and stuff like that. That's so creepy when you're a kid.
Yes.
Or when he's sitting next to the woman that's like cut in half in the like afterlife, or the person with the shrunken head on his big body. Like, it's just those images that I haven't seen Beetlejuice in so many years, but those images just like jump out at me even now as an adult.
Yeah. I was just Googling it like a couple weeks ago and saw those, and man, yeah, like when you watch those scenes now on YouTube or something, it's like obviously played for laughs. It's obviously like a joke for adults, but when you're a kid, it definitely gets in your brain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. The part that actually scared me a lot in Beetlejuice was the shrimp hands. Like the part that's supposed to be hysterical when they're singing and dancing and the hands grab their faces. I think I was just like so freaked out by the finger shrimp.
I totally forgot about those.
You did? Oh my god, the best part of the movie.
I was like, shrimp hands, what are you talking about? And then when he said to grab their face, I was like, oh my god, he just had like a vivid image of that.
Yeah, that movie
and then
rocks.
they giggle, the high-pitched giggle. They're like, hee. And it's, anyway, like that moment obviously cemented in my brain, but yes. Whoo, boy.
It shouldn't be scary at all because the plot is like totally funny. Like, I guess when you're a kid, it feels unfortunate where you're like, they're dead. But like, that's so funny that two ghosts that aren't good at being ghosts, you know what I mean? That like, they're bad at it.
So funny.
Yeah, so good.
They put the sheets on thinking that they're being ghosts with the sheets.
Perfect. It's the perfect movie. What else? I'm trying to think. Event Horizon was one that I remember watching as a kid.
Man, that movie.
Boy.
I think I saw that
on the other
cable.
end of the spectrum.
Yeah, I think I saw that on cable, though.
Oh.
A lot of these are like, the ones that I did catch at home are also like a blur because, like 4 hours long on TBS and filled with commercials. But Event Horizon was also really, really good. Like, that's just such a good idea that, like, a spaceship could go to hell.
I can't imagine watching that one as a kid. I was trying to think when I saw it. I must have been in high school at that point when that came out. But man, that movie, I could see that easily fucking up a kid for sure.
Yeah.
Fucks me up now as an adult.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen it since I was a teen.
I think I watched it a couple years ago again, and it's definitely still really fun. Like, or it's just such a fun, like, premise, like a spaceship that goes into warp drive that takes it to hell. You know what I mean? So good.
Yeah.
I love Paul W.S. Anderson. So we talked about you liking like horror as a kid. So, but what draws you to the horror genre now as an adult?
What does? I mean, I guess I enjoy. I mean, I think everybody as a artist or like video creator, like you enjoy playing off a mythology that kind of already exists. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You enjoy. That's what everybody wants to. Or that's what everybody does anyway with their movies. That's why superhero movies are so big right now, because they can just be like, you guys know the rules to Superman, right? And then they just make a movie. You know, they only have to take like 5 minutes to establish him.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess playing in that like genre space is like really, really. You get to like play with other people's rules. You know what I mean? You get to be like, you guys know the rules to like vampires, right? Well, here's like kind of a goofy look at them, or here's like a different way to like imagine that world you're already familiar with. You know?
Yeah.
So at least when I wanted to make this movie, which is like a horror comedy, we were looking for something like that. And we already lived in the South where like Bigfoot is not as big, I guess, as in the Pacific Northwest, but like there's definitely Bigfoot researchers in the South. And so we were like, well, that'd be like the perfect, comedy horror vehicle using Bigfoot that any kind of cryptid really, but like we settled on Bigfoot. Yeah, like using a cryptid that. Did you guys ever watch those like History Channel documentaries as a kid?
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
Zach.
Yeah.
Zach. We're going to talk about this, but I worked on a show called Finding Bigfoot, so this is why I'm very excited to talk to you, because I have like an obsession with Bigfoot. So like
Really?
boy.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I remember like watching all those like cold case files and unsolved mysteries. And then also, any like History Channel would do that kind of thing all the time. They would just do like a 30-minute documentary, like a fake like a little just put together stock footage documentary about like the Jersey Devil or something.
Yep.
And I would just like watch that stuff all the time.
Wow. Okay. Before I want to dive into Bigfoot since we seem to be going into that direction. But before we do, one question I'd love to ask is: do you still get scared watching horror films as an adult?
Yeah, it's not often, but yeah. All right, that depends. Like Green Room, super intense. Green Room was like such an intense movie. That was like such a jump scare kind of movie. Scary. Okay. All right. We maybe it was because we were sleepy, but also, we started the movie late, but we did revisit Sinister like a day later. Like back when it first came out, we were like, you know what? Let's just not be creeped out tonight. Let's just go to bed.
Sinister is freaky.
Yeah. Sinister scares the shit out of me, like still to this day. Okay. So we've talked about your horror life, but Zach, can you tell us about your new movie, 15 Things You Didn't Know About Bigfoot? Number 1 will blow your mind.
Okay, so 15 Things You Didn't Know About Bigfoot is a movie about a journalist who works at one of these clickbait outlets like Vice, BuzzFeed, Refinery 29, any one of these. Copy paste any of these. And he works he's a journalist, but he always wanted to, cover more meaningful stories, cover like what he deems like actual news, but he is currently pigeonholed in having to cover, I went to Burning Man and here's what it's really like. I spent a week with nudists and here's, what that's like. And his latest assignment is to go spend a week with Bigfoot hunters and report back on what the experience is like. So he's already kind of pissed off that he has to go cover like another puff piece, human interest thing that he thinks is a waste of his time. But then when he gets there, he discovers that Bigfoot might be real, And this might be the biggest story he's ever stumbled upon.
Okay, so I do have a question, because I saw this back at Chattanooga last year. And at the time, it was the Vice Guide to Bigfoot. And I'm guessing that it was a legal reason to change the name.
Oh, no. It's just preference. No. It's it's highly illegal to be calling ourselves Vice.
But I do have a question. Did you have to re-record the dialogue? Because I noticed rewatching it for the podcast that, it's now Compound. So did you have to re-record the dialogue?
No, there's only 3 or 4 times that they mentioned it in the show, in like coming out of an actor's mouth in dialogue. And so when we shot the movie, we had him do it both ways.
Okay.
And then I just subbed it back out. And then the rest of the mention of the news organization is all graphics.
Right.
So I just kind of changed all that out, all the graphic design. Unfortunate. I wish we'd put it out just as the Vice Guide to Bigfoot and just see what happens.
I mean, that would have been hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, though. So you have picked a favorite topic of mine, which is cryptids. And
yes.
So why did you want to do a film about Bigfoot, first of all?
Bigfoot? Well, I mean, like I said, all right, if you got to go with the cryptid, I mean, he's the guy, right? Or
he is the guy.
He or
she,
she, is number one in the cryptid world. Like I said, we want to do something that had like kind of a southern feel to it and also kind of goofy character. Like we wanted to have kind of a goofy guide character. And
yeah,
if you, I mean, you have spent time with Bigfoot hunters. I think Bigfoot hunters are very serious about it, but they have a sense of humor, right? Like they definitely,
for the most part, yes.
Yeah, I'm now part of several Bigfoot researcher Facebook groups, and there's definitely a pretty strong meme culture going on, even amongst people that are real researchers that like spend time in the woods hunting Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely have a meme culture. And so we wanted to do something that we could like kind of be goofy with, but could also be a real threat, like an actual scary monster.
I'm trying to think of all the questions I have for you.
You have any more?
So
we met a lot of Bigfoot researchers too. If you have any,
I was going to say, what was it like
Bigfoot?
meeting all the Bigfoot researchers? Because I did social media for the show Finding Bigfoot a couple years ago when I was first starting out, and I got really into Bigfoot because I thought it was so fun. I like the show. It's for Animal Planet, so like it doesn't make much sense. But I was like, this show is so goofy but fun, and it's cryptids and it's spooky, and I got so into it because I just like Bigfoot's cool. Like, I don't know if he's real or not, but like it's a cool thing, and like the folklore behind Bigfoot and like the culture stuff that has come from Bigfoot is absolutely fascinating. So I'm just always so fascinated when there are movies about Bigfoot and how the idea is like interpreted into films. And I like that you talked to a Bigfoot researcher, and like you said, you've talked to tons of Bigfoot researchers in getting ready for this project.
So that scene in the movie where they go to a Bigfoot festival, that's a real Bigfoot festival.
I was going to say, is that a real? I was going to ask if that was a real Bigfoot festival, because I know
we actually went to one, and we thought maybe we would use footage of actual researchers. So we did. Brian did some interviews in character, and we recorded it, and then we just didn't use it. It just didn't really fit, But we talked to several researchers from everywhere, from like Kentucky to Florida to Georgia to that festival was in North Carolina. Yeah, so we met quite a few people, and actually I had a guy that here's something that all Bigfoot researchers do is they volunteer evidence, like when you're not asking for it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I had a dude actually who, he was nice enough to read the script before we even shot it. Cause I was trying to just make sure like, hey, I wanted to make sure like, hey, we're not like, misinterpreting anything, like the way that knocking works or the way that like Bigfoot hunting works. Like I want to make sure it's all correct. He read it, and then he like called me, and I think I was only asking about like 2 or 3 scenes, and then he called me and he was like, hey, real quick, pull up your YouTube, and I was like, okay, and then I pulled it up and he was like, yeah, look up the Great North Tape, and then I looked it up and I like watched it, and then he was like, I just think probably you should include that evidence in your movie, and I was like, that's not really what I was asking, but okay. was like a 15...
My movie is not about proving the existence of Bigfoot.
Exactly.
But okay.
Yeah. Oh, and that was like 15 minutes later. Like, it was like a 10 or 15 minute conversation about the Great North Tape. And then he was like, I just think this could be really useful. And I was like, I don't think you understood the meaning of this phone call.
Oh my God, that's amazing. So I am just reminiscing now because you have had this experience with Bigfoot researchers. So for work, I went Bigfooting because I thought it'd be fun to go Bigfooting. And
was it?
It was interesting. I sat in the dark in the woods for like 3 hours and did nothing. But the woman who I went with was a very kind person. She was very nice, very kind. I was worried I was going to get killed in the woods just on the concept of going out to look for Bigfoot alone in the middle of the woods where I live with a stranger.
That's sort of a horror movie, Mary Beth.
Yeah. Yeah. But okay, so Bigfoot, you also have done something besides Bigfoot that I love, and it's found footage / the mockumentary format, which is like another one of my big favorites in horror. So what brought you to wanting to create this kind of mockumentary, pseudo-documentary style for this film?
Yeah, so we had made a bunch of shorts before. We used to run a short film like competition every month, and we used to make shorts for it and stuff, and folks would come out and watch all the new stuff we made every month. It was a great time. But we started making a series of shorts that were making fun of Vice. And it was actually inspired because Vice did a show called Flophouse. Have you heard of this? It's like a show about stand-up comedians.
I think I have. I've never watched it, though. But
a bunch of my peers, because we all did stand-up comedy, and a bunch of my peers were beginning to like get opportunities to be on Vice, and then Flophouse came and did an episode where like they got to be on Vice as like part of a stand-up thing. But it was like so fake. It was so everybody. The set was so fake. It was supposed to be about like comedians living in squalor, but they made the place look amazing. It was like if you've ever been on like a reality show set, it was like that, and everybody was like they just kind of did what a reality show does, where they got everybody drunk and everybody acted like an ass on television. Like, everybody that I thought had a shred of dignity, like, turns out had none in the matter of a couple of hours and a few beers. Were we getting off? Oh, yeah. We just thought it was funny, though, to make sketches mocking Vice directly because everybody that was around us was, like, so eager to, like, kiss their ass to get a TV show that we were like, you know what? Let's just bite the nearest hand that could feed us. And, so we started making these sketches. One of them was called, one of them was Brian basically doing the same character he's doing now. And it was him. I'm trying to remember the opening monologue. It's like him walking down the street and he's like, I'm an atheist, but I'm also spiritual. And then and then the tagline of the show, like the title was, but if there's one thing I do know, it's this. It's that Vice will put me on television. And then it's like a screen cap of him, and it's a screen cap of 6 other guys who really have shows on Vice, and they all look the same. Because Vice has like a
it's funny that you say like the Vice host, and I think of like, I don't even know anyone's name. There's just like a very specific aesthetic and like tone of voice.
Yeah, we used to watch the Vice News on HBO and like later be like, what was the thing where they were talking about the research? Was that the woman with glasses or the guy with glasses? Like, they all blend together.
They have a lot of tattoos. I can't really talk shit because I look like a lot of those people, but I can laugh at myself.
The other one that we made was another friend of mine who's like a little bit like schlubbier. His thing was like, I'm Joel Ruiz and I'm too high for this. And so it was just him it was him kind of doing like an Action Bronson kind of vibe, where like, you know, they give a lot of rappers TV shows, and it's every time he was about to like bring the guest on, he would be like, but first I gotta roll one up. And then he would smoke and then forget where he was. Like, it would come back from him smoking. He's like, I don't know where I am. I'll have to send him to you guys.
Oh my god, it's hilarious.
Sorry. I have no fucking idea what I'm doing. That is what whenever I watch those shows, I always laugh. I'm like, how are you guys that high and know what you're doing? Like, there's absolutely no way. Like, it's just.
But yeah, so we kind of got into a rhythm with our, and we'd kind of gotten into a rhythm before that with making fun of, like, whether it's cooking shows or HGTV type shows. Like, if you can imitate, you can really, like, have fun imitating exactly what the templates look like and the hosts act like and shit like that. And if you can really nail the cinematography of it, like, it gives it another level of being funny. It's like doing a good impression. Like, if someone's really good at impressions, it makes it way easier to be funny.
I know exactly what you're talking about, because when you start watching, there was a time where I was just like binge watching a bunch of YouTube cooking shows, and the format the same, like the way everything is shot is the same. It really, I can definitely see where that kind of comes from, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a new way of editing that's like it's been really stealthy, because it mostly snuck in with, like, you know, it started with like kind of hipster YouTube stuff through like Vimeo, and then now it kind of crept through like corporate, and now it's starting to make its way onto television too. Not completely, because there's still definitely like reality TV that doesn't look like hipster documentary stuff. But yeah, there's like a whole way of just it all kind of came up through, like, I think like Vimeo, where every time they cut to B-roll, it's like a rack focus or something too close. You don't know what the hell you're looking at.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I can see that aesthetic right away.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, sorry, I'm just thinking about.
You're good.
No, I'm just amazing. Okay, so Zach, we have talked about your film movie. Again, guys, I can't talk. Zach, we've talked about your film and your horror history, but what film are we discussing today, Zach?
We are talking about Alien.
Finally! We have been so excited to talk about this film. So for those of you who haven't seen Alien, please go watch it. But so after a space-towing vessel receives an unknown transmission as a distress call, one of the crew is attacked by a mysterious life form, and they soon realize that its life cycle has merely begun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, Zach, tell us your horror story about Alien, when you first saw it, what terrified you. Tell us everything.
It's so creepy because it's body horror, but it's body horror, and it's like, but it's slow. It's like I remember as a kid just like having to contemplate like what would happen if you got infected with one of those things. You know what I mean? Like that's what's so creepy about it, is being infected, but it's not like I guess it's not like a zombie thing, because you know you're gonna die and it's gonna, like, you're a host for a nasty bug thing. And I just remember like being creeped out by this movie as a kid. Sorry, I don't have any more details. I just remember like the body horror creeping me out. Everything's like wet and dripping. You know, it's.
So do you remember how old you were when you first saw it?
I was.
Do you remember the first time you watched Alien?
I was probably 11.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember how you ended up seeing it? Because I know you said that your mom didn't typically allow a lot of horror movies.
Yeah, I don't know
house.
why we were allowed to watch this one. I just remember we might have rented it, or I remember watching it when we were in our house in Florida. I even remember like we were eating something with we were eating sandwiches that had pickles on them, and like I still think about pickles for some reason with this movie, which is a weird place to be. But yeah, I mean, I do remember
love that though.
Right, when you associate something like that,
like
something so nice with something so gross.
Yeah, I have that same reaction.
Pickles are the gross thing, by the way.
What?
Fuck off!
Kidding.
I love pickles. That is so funny. My friends were just having a discussion in our group chat about how pickles were gross and how I'm not going to be their friend anymore because I love pickles so much. I think
gross things become better when you're an adult. All of a sudden, when you're older, you're like, yeah, put pickles and blue cheese together, and like, I'm in.
And like, I do eat Brussels sprouts like with a frightening regularity now as an adult. So
yeah.
Ugh,
anyway,
that's one I can't. That's one I can't do.
Really?
Yeah.
They're good.
It tastes like dirt.
I don't know if I'll be able to convince you, but they're good.
If you put the good amount of seasoning in
if you cover up the flavor of Brussels sprouts,
bake them, but like when you you put them in the oven and they sit at like 400 and they get all crispy and stuff.
Yeah. So I've never actually done that at the house, but I had that for the first time a couple of years ago at a friend's house because my parents always just like bake them and they just kind of come out like wet little slime balls. But
yes,
yeah. But then like baked and crispy, so good.
Oh
like
my
chips.
God, I have an air fryer now because. Of course, I'm at that point in my life where I have an air fryer, and I want to try to make them in the air fryer and get them all like super duper crispy.
I've also got an air fryer, but this is a thing for a different podcast.
This is a cooking podcast now, everybody, where we talk about Brussels sprouts and foods that gross us out as children.
We're complicated. Okay, so you're 11 years old. You maybe rented this film. Do you remember particular scenes at all, or was it just the sort of overall kind of tension of the film?
Just the overall tension of the film. And you know what? Actually, I think we might have watched both in the same night, the Alien and Aliens.
Oh, wow.
Because I do remember the scene where the kids like, kill me. You know, I remember that. That was that was super creepy. Yeah, just it's kind of like a zombie, but I don't know if it has a different time limit. No, I don't know. I don't know what's different about it, but it feels creepier than being a zombie, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it's like there's the idea of infection like with a zombie, but then what comes out of you is a completely sentient and intelligent being. Like you're being hunted. Yeah. Like I feel like with zombies you're being hunted, but they're very mindless. There isn't as much of a like intelligence to them as more of like a hunger. But with the xenomorphs, they are like intelligent beings that are hunting you on purpose and like hiding and that kind of thing. Like you don't know where they are because they are.
Yeah, they're somehow an apex predator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But then they lay eggs in you. Oh, it's so
they lay eggs
disgusting.
In you. I know.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Watching the chest bursters. Just watching that guy stuck up against the wall in Aliens and it like begging to die.
I have a very specific memory of this film, and it's one of the reasons why the moment that you said you were interested in talking about this film, I was so excited because I have wanted to talk about this film ever since we started the podcast like over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was 8 years old. This was the first R-rated film that I had ever seen. I had grown up on 50s sci-fi, you know, flying saucers, the sort of like Day the Earth Stood Still, Earth versus the Flying Saucers. Like, I had a specific view of what aliens were, and it was a flying saucer with either like some kind of robot or some kind of cheap-looking creature that was going to come out of it, and it was safe. And so I thought that that's what this movie was about.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when my parents said, hey, you want to see a really scary movie? We're going to watch Alien tonight. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. And I spent the day, I had a very active imagination, and I spent the day imagining like, okay, so there's going to be a flying saucer and it comes down and there's going to be an alien coming out. Like, this is what little 8-year-old me was thinking. And my parents knew how terrifying the film was because they had introduced a bunch of their friends to it, and they'd always gotten the same reaction with this particular scene. So I'm watching this film with them, and I'm like, This is not what I thought this was going to be. And then we get to the dinner scene when the alien bursts out of Kane's chest, and I remember I have this vivid memory of me staring at the screen with like I'm pretty sure that like all the blood had drained out of my face, and I was just like staring at it like wide-eyed and terrified. My parents looking at me with this like horrifying grin on their face of like, ha, 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 we scared him.
Oh my God.
Yes. And then my parents were like, are you okay? And I just remember like shaking my head back and forth, no. And they're like, do you want to stop? And I remember nodding up and down. And so we stopped that movie that night. I had the most vivid nightmares that entire night. God. And I was so terrified of this film. And so this is where I started doing something, though, because you brought up watching Alien second. And so after watching that film, I would start to watch. If a movie scared me, I would immediately try to go watch the sequel. And so I remember watching Aliens, and I remember that moment you're talking about the woman that's cocooned in the wall, and she's like, "Kill me," and it didn't bother me because I was already like, "Okay, it's gonna burst out of it. I'm okay with this." Mm-hmm. And so I remember watching Aliens and being like, okay, I can handle this. And then eventually going back and watching the first Alien. But I'll tell you what, that first moment of that film just like blew my fucking mind as a kid.
Yeah, you're probably onto something with the fact that it's so different from other Alien movies up to that point. You know what I mean? That it would be an alien that's more of like an animal. You know, it's less of like an intelligent creature and just like an animal parasite.
I remember that when the ship is, because we're first introduced to this Nostromo, and it's like zooming across the vast reaches of space, and it kind of is a scene that kind of is reminiscent of like Star Wars, except that this ship looks busted and it looks alien itself. I mean, it's basically like a giant oil rig that's floating in space. And I remember seeing that and thinking that was the alien ship immediately, and not realizing that there was actually human beings on this thing, because it looked so different from anything that I had ever expected aliens to be, or an alien movie to be. Yeah,
it's super, super dark. It's just the whole. I just recently watched it again, and it's like all the frames are so dark and everything. Like every shot is dark. It's like super dark and sticky. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like there's a lot of stuff in this movie that like upon the last reviewing of this, I was like, why is there just a part of the ship that just drips? You know what I mean? Like they're in that it's where the one guy gets eaten and the cat is there and the cat like hisses. He's like in a part of the ship where the water's like dripping on his face and stuff. And I was like, what is there, like an air conditioning unit above him, or like what's going on?
Yeah, because I remember, because that's the part where there's like the chains coming down and he's by himself, and it's one of the first like big on-screen death moments. And that moment, it goes on for so long too. Like it is such a like suspenseful thing of him walking through those chains and the water and like you said, where the hell is this water coming from? This doesn't feel right in a ship to have water just like dripping, like in space, water just like falling down. So this creates this really weird atmosphere. And
and what do those chains do? like do they open a garage door? What the hell's going on in this ship? It feels more like a warehouse. Like most of this movie feels more like they're in like an abandoned warehouse or something.
That's something I deal with a lot when watching sci-fi movies and these giant ships. I just have no concept of scale, and I just don't understand like how big they are, how small they are, like where things are in a giant spaceship like that. Like I just don't have any concept of the layout and like where things are and what a ship is supposed to be like. You know what I mean? Like it's just the size baffles me, and the construction of spaceships baffles me, I think.
I do, but I also think that's sort of I think that's the purpose of this particular one, is that it feels sort of maze-like. It feels sort of, I mean, it's an industrial in the way that like an oil rig would be industrial. And I think that is probably some of the way that it's trying to tie us into, yes, this is in space, but yes, we can still scare you because there are things in it that would be on Earth, or would be like reminiscent of everyday life on Earth for people, particularly for blue collar workers working in that kind of environment.
Oh my God, blue collar workers in this movie. Well, and there's this one of the scene, my favorite moments in this movie. It's like very quiet, but it's when he takes off his hat and starts drinking the water that's dripping off the ceiling. And it's like this moment of like quiet, almost relaxation. It's like he's done this before. It's kind of, he's taking a quick break, and then he is rendered helpless.
And what I love about that, though, too, is that up until that point, this is why the movie keeps surprising, is that first we have the facehugger, and then that changes into this little worm-like thing that bursts out of his chest. And so at this point, we're not expecting a big thing. He's not expecting a big thing. He's expecting some kind of like little worm creature. And then all of a sudden, when it descends behind him, it's like this giant insect, weird, creepy thing. And it's the way the film continues to like surprise us.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess I wasn't alive when this came out, but like going into this, there's no way you could have guessed that that escalation of like what these creatures are. Like you said, you know what I mean? Like you expect it to be, you know, aliens. They come down a little saucer. But then, you know, they look like a crab and they lay eggs in you, and then it's, yeah, like you said, it becomes like a little 1 foot tall thing that then becomes something, you know, that's huge, like the size of like a lion or something.
And then it has a mouth inside of its big mouth. Like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And then it has acid slobber.
Acid blood.
Acid blood, not acid slobber. Pardon me. Yes.
So how old were you when you saw this, Mary Beth?
I have no idea. I know that this is one of the movies that my dad really wanted to show me when I was a kid, because my dad is a big horror movie person, and he wanted to show me all the classics and make sure I had seen like all of the really good movies. And I hadn't seen this one yet. I remember watching it in a certain apartment, so I was under the age of 13.
Okay.
And I had seen Predator first, and I had somehow seen Alien versus Predator already. So I had seen Alien versus Predator before I had seen Alien. So that's upsetting for a variety of reasons. But
is this where your love of Paul W.S. Anderson comes from?
It might just fucking be because I really liked Alien versus Predator. Because I had no concept of the franchise, so I was like, oh yeah, this is fun. But then I saw Alien for real and was blown the fuck away. I loved it. I don't even remember being that terrified of it, but I just remember being so tense the whole time. Like I didn't relax the entire time watching it. And I think that was one of the first times I remember that happening, of me just being so uncomfortable the entire time. And literally being on the edge of my seat.
I mean, that's also amazing, because when you think about it, it's a 2-hour movie, and the chest bursting, the actual like alien stuff doesn't even really happen until almost an hour into this film. So the first 60 minutes of this film is, I mean, yes, there's the face hugger and there's that kind of stuff, but like, it's more about that kind of creeping tension that I think some kids might get bored by. So I'm always fascinated when I hear that, this 2-hour movie that is slower than a lot of movies are paced today can like terrify kids across generations. Because I mean, I was seeing this in the 80s, and you were probably seeing this in the 90s, right?
Me, yes, yeah.
And you, Mary Beth?
I was seeing it in the 2000s.
Oh, in the 2000s,
like early 2000s, yeah.
Yeah, so I actually went back and watched. I think I watched part of Resurrection. I turned that off, but these were all on HBO Max like 6 months ago. So we watched all of them.
Oh yeah, they were.
Yeah. So I have a fresh taste of all of them again, and then I watched the first one just like last week for this podcast, and the only note I took was, okay, so Alien was obviously like the best one. I stopped taking notes. I just went back to look at my notes, and all I wrote was, Alien's the best one.
Yes.
But
I agree.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the second one is like except for that one scene we're talking about, it's mostly action. It's mostly like action for little kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and so like this is like a slasher movie in space with an alien.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a monster in the house with you movie. It's great.
But Terry, like you brought up the fact that there's an hour before the alien happens, and I always forget that they go to that planet. Like they go to they're an oil rig, not an oil rig. Shit, what is it?
Oil.
What's the resource? Is it oil?
Tanker. It is oil, isn't it?
Well, they're a towing vehicle. But
vehicle. Okay.
Yeah, it's containing
I was trying to remember.
20 million tons of some mineral oil or ore. They never really explain what it is, but
so they're like blue collar workers, basically, or like some of them are blue collar workers. They're bringing resources back to Earth, and then they have to go to. It's like, oh, there's a planet. It's a person in distress. You have to go find it, and they're all like, we don't know how to do this. Like we're just
and they're like, we don't want to do it. They're
like,
no, fuck that.
Well, especially like the blue collar workers come into this too when they're like, I don't get paid to do this. Like I get this amount of credits for this work. I'm not going overtime, which is not until I was in grad school when I watched this, like understood really like how intense this film is about like the use of the human body as a cog in the machine and how disposable they are. And, there's these two characters, the only black character, and then there's the older white character who is coded as kind of like a redneck who basically just like begging to be given like the bare minimum. Like, please just pay us. And they're the only ones that are like, this is dumb. Like, we shouldn't be doing this. We're not getting paid to do it. Why is this our job? Like,
exactly.
No.
Because Parker says, this is a commercial ship, not a rescue ship. It's not in my contract to do this kind of duty. And there's this focus on the shares and the monetary payment for. My mind just like took a total shit. There's this focus on like on money, because you can kind of get this feeling that there is a definite, even among this small ship of very small number of people, there is a definite hierarchical structure here where you have the people that are running the ship, and then you have the two engineers that are somehow tasked. What's amazing to me is that they're somehow tasked to keep this entire ship that is obviously ginormous, keep it running. And that's amazing to me.
That is another thing with these movies where it's like a very small number of people on a very large ship. And I'm like, is that reasonable to think that many people can keep that big of a vessel running? But I digress.
mean, capitalism. It's cheaper to like have two people, and that ship
Nostromo is capitalism. The Nostromo is capitalism.
Plus, that ship looks fucking janky. It looks like it's been to like hell and back. Speaking of Event Horizon, it's interesting to me as an adult watching this now and seeing that the way that there's like a careless disregard for the two engineers' position, even with Ripley, because in that conversation when they're talking, she's like, yeah, you'll get what's coming to you. And then she's like, when they're arguing, she kind of puts them in their place by saying, if you need anything, I'll be on the bridge, which is obviously not where they're allowed because they're just the engineers. So there's even our hero is kind of putting these two in their place, so to speak.
Yeah, there's a definite like you said, like a hierarchy of who's allowed to do what. And then when she tries to keep them off the ship because they might be contaminated, like the company man gets to allow them on, and he's like, yeah, I violated protocol, so what?
That scene, watching it in COVID America, takes on quite a different meaning. Where
I really hate how many movies have completely taken on new meaning with COVID. I'm just like, I hate that this feels so relevant to my current life.
Well, and I love the way that, she is rationally, like, obviously, okay, so the situation with Dallas, Kane, and Lambert, when they're coming back and they're dragging Kane's body and there's something attached to his head, like, you can kind of see there's sort of like fear of the situation. They're stuck outside in this incredibly harsh environment. Like when we're introduced to what eventually is called LV-426, where everything, like the rain is literally like pieces of debris falling down on them. Mm-hmm. It is not a pleasant place, and they're stuck out there. So you can kind of understand their fear. They don't know what's going on. And the way that Ripley sort of takes charge and is like, if we let them on the ship, it could be infected. The quarantine procedure, 24 hours. And they're like arguing with her, and she's like, "Yes, I hear you. The answer is negative." Like it's such an interesting kind of dichotomy between the two. And then, of course, like you said, the company man just sort of like lets them on, callous disregard for anyone's life.
Yeah, I didn't even really, I guess, think about that. Well, no, I guess I did, but it just the hierarchy is definitely very, very clear. The whole time that they're on that planet, though, the whole time you're just like, just get out of there. Like, even though there's no alien yet, you're like, just leave. It's such a like haunted house feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Probably just because it's like rainy and shit, but it's just windy. You're like, just get in the ship.
But it's also just like the vibe too, the score and the sound design of this movie. Like
and creepy Forerunner skeletons or whatever those things are called. The Prometheus guys.
Yeah, I think everyone referred to them as like the space jockeys in this.
Is that what they are?
Well, that's what everyone like used to call them before like Prometheus came out and kind of flipped the switch on what they were. But I remember everyone's like, "What is the space jockey?" And I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?" But they're referring to the big skeletal dude that's like, it's so awe-inspiring, the set design in this film. And that scene in particular, I remember as a kid going, "What am I don't even know what I'm looking at." And of course you're watching it.
Yeah.
Back then, I was watching it on a beta tape. It was either beta or VHS, so the quality is terrible. It's not like nowadays. I popped in when I rewatched it's my 4K restoration of the film, and it's like you can see things that you didn't. But I remember at that time, it's sort of like this blurry image on this old CRT, and being like, "What am I even looking at?"
And like when I was younger and watched it, I like didn't even fucking think about it. Like, isn't that fun? Like, you watch this movie when you're a kid, and like the things you latch onto, pun intended, with the face hugger, but like you don't appreciate these things as much. And like another thing that just popped into my mind in terms of scenes that really like I appreciate now is when they're all waking up from the cryo sleep and they're in their beds, and all of a sudden all of the but it's just like, it's beautiful. Like, even just this quiet moment of people waking up in these pods, it's just like everything is so beautifully constructed to make you feel a very specific way. And it's just a gorgeous masterclass in like this creating of emotion and creation of horror through not only the cinematography, but just like this tight set design. Creepy set design.
Noise.
But so then I kind of want to talk more about the breakfast table scene, because obviously that's the iconic scene where John Hurt expels a being from the inside out, and they are eating space Cheerios
and smoking and stuff.
Smoking. I was like, all right. Another like quick side note, I love it in these breakfast scenes, like, or like these scenes in Ships in the Future, and they're all eating Cheerios and smoking cigarettes, and you watch them now and you're like, the future. I love that this vision of the future was very colored by 1970s expectations. But anyway, they're all like, this is a moment where they're all equal. Like, they're all sitting at a table together, eating and laughing. And it's this one moment of like kind of equality with everybody. They're all breaking fast together. They're all laughing. He's finally like awake, and they aren't scared anymore, and it's this very brief joy. And then all of a sudden, just like the crack of the ribs and this horrible screaming from John Hurt and like on the table. And then the moment when it pushes through and the blood spurts out and everyone just stops, like yelps and stops. Oh my God. It is such a well, like, choreographed moment.
I love that it gives us a moment to like process what's going to happen along with the people that are watching. So they have him on the table, and all of a sudden his shirt turns red and there's like blood erupts. Everyone freezes and they're staring at him and like, wait, what just happened? And it's like this beat that allows the audience to like process briefly what happened, and then it goes full horror with he just starts struggling again, and they're holding him down again, and then that's when it leaps out of his chest and covers them all in blood, and poor Lambert is looking on with the most horrified expression I've seen in a movie. I think that's like feels real. But I love the way that whole sequence is constructed.
I love the scene when the company man who turns out to be a cyborg attacks, and then they put him back together. You know what I mean? They put him back together to
the milky
talk
milk
to him. Yeah, I know. It's it was such a weird thing to see as a kid. You know what I mean? To because it's not particularly scary, I guess, but it's so like gross. I guess it's kind of scary to see a disembodied head talking to you and stuff.
So when I first watched this movie, I never got to that part where they introduced that Ash is an android, because I stopped literally at the dining scene where it bursts out of his chest. And so I remember watching the sequel and being introduced to Bishop, and he's like sitting there with, poking his skin, and there's like the milky substance coming down his finger, and then he ends up being a good guy. And I remember being so confused about that because I hadn't been introduced to the fact that Ash was an android in the original film. And then watching this again, when I finally went back to watching this scene, that sequence grossed me the fuck out, because it's so milky. It's so seminal.
Just fucking the goo. It just adds on to like the gooey body fluids of this movie, and it's just like sexually nasty man milk. Sorry, that's disgusting.
Sorry. I dig it.
Well, and he attacks Ripley with another form of almost like sexual assault, mimicking the alien, because he winds up the newspaper, or I guess it's a newspaper, a magazine, and starts like stuffing it down her throat. It's like he's kind of taking on the characteristics of the alien and doing what he can do to basically assault her. And it's such an upsetting scene. I remember being really confused about that scene as a kid, and being like, I don't get what is going on here and why this is so upsetting, but it upset me as a kid.
Yeah, and then it's such a crazy reveal when what's his face? Sorry, I'm so bad at names. when he hits his head off.
Yeah.
When he like knocks his head clean off, and then you find such a strange, like, oh, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. There's so many moments like that in this film of like, it feels like firsts. Like there's a lot of firsts in this film.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, like, this is the first film I ever remember seeing where it was that specific kind of android is the person reveal. And I feel like that happens a lot more now, but that was the first, like, yeah, holy shit. Like, people can be constructed to look like people, but actually be villains and can be part of that capitalistic machine that just wants to serve the purposes of the corporation. And it's so funny watching this movie and forgetting that, like, we didn't know it was called Weyland-Yutani when this first came out. They weren't xenomorphs when this first came out. Mm-hmm. There were so many like lore aspects that got built up over the franchise, and now you watch it and you're like, oh yeah, they didn't have a name for any of this stuff, which is really interesting to think about in the development of Alien. And
it's so different from the way that people construct a franchise anymore, you know?
Right? Well, and that's what it's like. It is so like kind of refreshing to go back and see that. And it's not like a huge lore dump, but it's like a gradual build up over time rather than an afterthought. You know what I mean? Like the sequels don't, well, some of the sequels feel like afterthoughts. Let's be real. Some of those,
no, they're great.
Something.
Start to finish.
We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah. Anyway.
The other thing that
I was going to say, I'm just looking at this. We were just talking about the android scene, and I was just looking at a video of it again, and like just when he first starts talking, all the milk that's coming out of his mouth.
Ugh. Yes,
it's like a half a glass of milk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so gross. And then he has like the weird, the cords coming out of his neck have like have like. I don't, anal beads is like a terrible analogy, but they like look like weird little bead things, and it's just like such a weird. You think he's a human, and then you see this very different mechanical inside of him, and it is very disarming.
So we had some vomit in my movie, and having to shoot with that is like kind of a fun challenge, because we obviously didn't have like the vomit guns on SNL or whatever. We just had a bunch of oatmeal, and so we would just give Jeff oatmeal before we shot, and you have to call out to the person. You have to be like, all right, I'm rolling. Jeff, you loaded? You have to be like, you ready? Because everybody's got to sync up and know when they're going, and they obviously can't talk to you. They can't be like, like, so. Yeah, exactly. So imagine just having to shoot this, and just this dude's head is clearly through a table or something, and having to, before you roll, you have to put like, a cup of milk in his mouth. And then,
are you loaded with milk?
Yeah, you loaded, buddy?
You know what? This might be the reason why I don't like milk, now that I'm thinking about it. I don't like milk whatsoever. And I haven't since, I don't know, sometime in being a kid, it would always turn my stomach at a certain point. And now I'm kind of wondering if this had something to do with it.
Because of this scene?
Because I do, and I have my entire life combined this idea before as an adult. Now I'm like noticing the sexual imagery in this film, and I'm like, okay, this is obviously like kind of some seminal like fluid connection here. But as a kid, my entire life, I just associated it with milk. And I'm wondering if this is why I don't drink milk anymore. And I haven't since I was a kid.
Can we declare it as canon that you're terrified of milk because of this movie?
I think we should, yes. It's canon.
This movie's the reason I still like milk. See, because every time I drink a glass of milk, I spit a little bit down my chin.
Oh.
And I pretend to be the cyborg from Alien. That's the only reason to drink milk, dude. It's actually disgusting. But if I get to pretend to be Ash from Alien.
I mean, of all the characters
Zach, if you drink your milk, you can pretend to be Ash the android from Alien. Okay, Mom.
Yeah. I'll have strong bones and a wet smile. It'd be nice.
great. We're done. The recording is over.
Okay, so oh, that was good. Oh my god. All right. I wanted to talk about kind of the disposability of bodies in this film and how disposable the entire cast feels in this film. And it comes down from like the faceless company and Ash's cold, kind of uncaring attitude, and the idea that, like, you know, crew is expendable, that Mother, the technology supercomputer from the future that takes up an entire room, you know, kind of exposition dumps. But the scene that kind of brought it to mind was when, after Kane is killed and they are doing his kind of funeral, and Dallas, they're all standing out there and the body's in the airlock, and they're like, does anyone want to say anything? No one does. And then he is sort of unceremoniously ejected into space. And it's kind of, I almost laughed a little bit watching it, Tim, because the body just sort of like gets shot out of space and it's like twisting around, and it's so, it feels so disposable. And it's the way the entire crew is seen through the eyes of both Ash and the Weyland-Yutani, the corporation.
But it's the body's wrapped up, right? It's like a mummy, right? It would have been funnier if the limbs were just allowed to just go flying.
Oh, there's a movie. There's a show there's a comedy show where that happens, where they shoot someone out and they get unwrapped and their limbs fly. Anyway,
I think I know what you're talking about. My girlfriend watched that, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway.
But anyway, what were we talking about? Yeah, how everybody's treated so emotionlessly. Yeah, definitely. Like it's a but at the same time, like, all the characters are really well developed. You can't.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like Predator, where you're like, oh, I got to know everybody. But so it's not like a slasher in that sense, where you're like, oh, we're just gonna like kill a bunch of red shirts today. But no, you're right though. It's got a. I wonder if this might have been the first movie that treated it like that, where it's a slasher that's from like a cold, merciless corporation, you know?
Yeah, well, that's actually a really interesting way to think about it, because it's like, you know, slashers are always like one dude with like, or one creature. But here, if you think about the slasher not just as the alien, but as the corporation itself, that actually is even more terrifying. And like, the more, you know, that was in 1979, but that's still very relevant today to how, you know, corporations create these machines, these things that are meant to bring about very quick and cold human death, very unfeeling and very efficient, if we want to put it that way, because they want this as like, they call it, Ash calls it the perfect organism, and like the corporation wants this perfect organism as a weapon. So yeah, that is an interesting idea of corporation as the slasher villain as well.
Yeah, it's such a good twist. Such a twist.
It is a twist. What a twist.
One thing that I did see, or I did hear watching it this time, is I watched it with headphones on. They were noise canceling, and I was sitting there watching the new 4K restoration of it. And this was the first time I picked this up, but there is breathing that happens in this movie that is like part of the background. And it's like this, the entire ship is sort of taking a deep breath and then releasing it and taking a deep breath. It feels like the ship is alive even in moments where it's so quiet. And it's mostly noticeable if listeners, if you go watch this movie, make sure you put on some good headphones. There's a scene towards the end where Ripley is finally talking to Mother, and the breathing sort of picks up at this scene, and it's something that I noticed throughout the entirety of it. And then when Ash is killed and he's being talked to, there's a sort of like skittering mouth sound as the best way I can describe it, that is happening underneath the breathing sounds. And there's like the sound design of this movie, even when there's no score, and Jerry Goldsmith's score is used very sparingly in this film, much to his chagrin, I've found out doing some research. But the way that the sound is designed in this movie is actually quite unsettling if you're listening to it the right way. Yeah,
I do remember hearing like the clicks and stuff under the Ash scene. I don't know if I picked up on the breathing are you talking about breathing from the astronauts, like from their suits?
No, it's like they're in the ship, and it is part of the like background noise of like this. It's almost like this. like this sound that is almost constant. And there's like a moment where it sounds like someone is whispering unintelligently under the hum of machinery. There's like some weird human noises going on in the background of this film that don't tie into the actors on screen that I noticed this first time. This is the first time I've ever noticed it.
Good creepy details. But now you got to tell us about what happened with the score.
Well, so Jerry Goldsmith wrote this big, long score, and he discovered basically that Scott and his editor replaced a lot of his cues, chose a different song choice, basically took a couple of his themes and cut them up and put them throughout the entire film.
Oh, damn. Yeah.
And there's this interview with Goldsmith. It was quoted from RogerEbert.com, but he told the Los Angeles Reader that working on Alien was, quote, one of the most miserable experiences I've ever had in this profession. I was on the picture for 4 months and I talked to you, Ridley Scott, 3 times. So there's definitely some animosity in this, which is interesting because he would go on to do Legend, and then that whole score was thrown away, and they went with what was the band? They went with some band to do the score of that. But he had actually written a score for Legend. So it's like it's weird to think of it, because Jerry Goldsmith, I think, is one of the best underrated composers that worked on horror films in like the 80s and the 90s, and this was his most miserable experience in his career.
That's so funny. It's just so funny to hear anybody to hear anybody be like, that was actually the worst thing that ever happened to me.
And you're like, oh, oops.
In like an interview. Yeah, actually, that was the most miserable experience of my life.
And it's so weird because like the score is so iconic. And I was particularly listening to it this time because I remember when I first started watching this for the podcast, I was like, oh, I love this score. And I wanted to know if there was any interviews with Jerry Goldsmith about it. And then I saw that. And I started realizing that his score is very sparingly used in this film. And it's unfortunate because what you do here is so good.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe it was too much. It might have been like Poltergeist.
Yeah.
If we went back and rewatched it, we'd be like, damn.
I mean, that's a good
way
point.
Way too much.
So going from like sound design to creature design, we should talk about the actual alien just for a hot second. Give a shout out to H.R. Giger's nasty ass artwork. Giger. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it's iconic. I mean, papers have been written on the design. It's so, it's such a, I don't know. It's such an interesting mix of well, I guess what Giger does best of combining like sexuality and like machinery and horrific images.
Yeah, and so he's an artist from 1940. For those unfamiliar, you should look up his art. It's literally everything from Alien. It's just a Giger painting. A piece of his work. It's just like everything, all of the set design and certain parts of like when they're on the planet in the ship looks just like that. The alien itself is very much shaped like that, with a very like phallic head. And then as we get into later in the series, like very sexual designs of both of the mother giant xenomorph, and his art is just very detailed and very industrial. I always think of his work as industrial. So it's this marriage of organic and industrial stuff coming together, and it's very jarring, creepy pieces of art.
I want to go to his museum.
Does he have one?
Is it in?
There is a museum in Switzerland.
I was going to say, is it in Switzerland?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I did not know about this. I remember my roommate in college when I was in film school. He had like a book of all of H.R. Giger's stuff. It was so cool. And now I'm actually Googling this stuff again, and it's pretty. This is ridiculous.
It's gnarly.
It's like so cool.
It's so cool, but it's so gnarly. Like
this
and
one
it's so
with
funny
like
when you
the
see
alien woman and the space jockey on top.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. He also designed the microphone for the lead singer of Korn.
No shit.
Yeah, the microphone that Jonathan Davis sings into when he goes on concert tours is designed by H.R. Giger.
Oh wow. Yep. But then besides just like the Giger art style, there's also the concept of the creature as an alien, but an alien like you talked about, Terry, not the alien that we're used to with like the grays, the big eyes, or like some kind of humanoid intelligence, but a apex predator that penetrates you without consent in the egg or with their little mouths.
It sort of takes the idea of the sort of like probing that was so popular in the 70s and takes it in a different direction, but still like is like an analogy for rape, for a lack of a better word. I mean, that's what it's doing.
Yeah. And it exactly, like, you know, people would always say like, oh, I was anally probed, and like it always was like almost a joke with talks about aliens in like the 40s and everything. But then with this, it is very much like it is happening. There is no hiding it, and it is very violent and very much confrontational, and is very much in the face of that idea of the alien invading the human body in a much more violent, parasitic way.
Yeah, exactly, because you definitely die. And you're definitely miserable.
Like, and you are just a host. You're not like you're not like a vessel for experiments or information. Like, you are just a host for incubating this, and then you're done. Like, you are, again, with the disposability of bodies, you are disposable to this creature. You are not food. You are a vessel. And once your usefulness has been run out, then you're dead, and you're left on the ground as just like a pile of flesh.
Yeah, it'd probably be much nicer to be eaten.
I think so too. I think I would rather be eaten than be like forcibly impregnated with a horrific bug-like looking alien creature.
I mean, honestly, Brett gets, I think, of the people that die, he gets it the best, because he just basically gets his head like exploded into by the little mouth. I mean, that was probably instantaneous. Compared to like some of the other things that happen in this, that would probably be the better way to go than what happens to poor Kane.
Yeah, I just can't imagine being alive while having that thing growing inside of you. I would. And you know, obviously, when I describe it like that, it sounds like pregnancy. And pregnancy is a terrifying concept to me in general. And this movie did not help me feel any better about the concept of pregnancy, because now all I ever think about is an alien inside of you about to just fucking burst out.
My God.
Like,
my girlfriend still calls babies parasites.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, because anyway, she's learned some manners, but she just says, well, I mean, like, she says this like to parents and stuff.
They kind of are parasitic.
Yeah.
They are parasites. It's just not socially acceptable to call them that, I guess.
I still do,
probably learn where the line is, at least, you know.
I guess.
Okay, so before we do wrap up, I do want to know, what is everyone's favorite and least favorite Alien movie?
Ooh. Well, obviously the favorite is Alien. It's got to be Alien.
Yeah. Okay.
Do we count?
Oh yeah, Prometheus, Alien Covenant,
Prometheus, all of those. Okay.
Alien versus Predator. Okay. We're doing that.
I don't consider those canon.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mary Beth.
No, don't apologize. They're not good. I just like them because I was a stupid child.
I mean, the first one's fun, but
I don't think I've seen Alien Covenant, though. No, I haven't seen that one. I need to check that out.
I honestly
is it good or
can't remember.
I really liked it, although it uses like an egregious amount of CG for the alien. It's that's the thing that like I feel like alien movies feel representative of the times that they come out. So you had Alien at the sort of like heyday of sort of the slasher and the classic horror film, and then Aliens feels like the quintessential 80s action horror film that was coming out at the time. Alien 3 definitely takes on the sort of nihilistic industrial grunge sort of aesthetic of like the 90s, and then you get to like the sort of weird era of the late 90s with Alien Resurrection, and Prometheus feels like that sort of time when we're trying to make big science fiction movies about something, and then Covenant feels like sort of like the blockbuster movie that is coming out at a time of like superheroes and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it definitely feels larger than life compared to the other ones, and it's trying to do some interesting things. But I do think that each movie feels indicative of the era that they were released in such a quintessential way.
Yeah, no, it's. I'm glad you broke them all down to size. you knew exactly.
I think about this a lot.
Belong.
This is my favorite franchise of any of the horror franchises. Every single movie, even Alien Resurrection, I can find something good about that I like or that I think is interesting. I do love this franchise more so than any other one.
It's such a strange. When I was rewatching them again on HBO Max, it's such a strange success story. Because it's not based on any book or anything, is it? It's not, right? Yeah, it just came out of nowhere. The two creators they made one movie before it, right? Wasn't it called like Dark Star or something?
Yeah, I think it was Dark Star. Yeah,
and it was a comedy, right? I've never seen it.
I have not seen it as well. I'm not 100% sure.
We should check this out because the trailer or the clip I saw online did not look very compelling. But I kind of want to watch it just to see what it's about. But then they made Alien, and then it's become. 6 real movies, right? Six Alien movies, and then Alien versus Predator, and then like some video games and stuff, and also the directors attached to this thing, and like some of the cast they get is really crazy. They had David Fincher did the third one, and then the fourth one was the Amelie guy, and then James Cameron.
James Cameron did the second one.
This is how shit I am at names. Is I was like snapping my fingers talking to somebody about this like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, yeah. And then the second one was Titanic guy, and like I was like, the guy who did Titanic, and then the blue people thing.
Well, I gotta say that at least like when they hire these directors, they are swinging for the fences. I mean, they even Resurrection has Jean-Pierre. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Jeunet, who would go on to do Amelie.
Yeah.
Like, I mean...
Wait, he did Amelie? I didn't even make that connection that he did Amelie.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
All these people have gone on to do wild-ass shit after Alien.
Oh, he did Delicatessen. That's a really good movie.
And didn't he do... What was the other thing? Children
he did
of...
The City of Lost Children.
Which is the film that got him this movie.
But
it's
that makes sense.
You hire the director of The City of Lost Children and the person that would go on to do Amelie, and you get Alien Resurrection. I mean, let's be honest, that's the movie you're going to get.
For sure.
Okay, but like, I kind of love Alien Resurrection, not because it's good, because it's so fucking batshit.
It really
is. It's my least favorite Alien movie, but I also really like. It is my least favorite by a long shot, but I couldn't stop laughing when she was like petting the human xenomorph hybrid at the end. Like, and I watched that recently because I didn't want to watch. I just like didn't see the benefit in watching it. And during the COVID, my fiance was like, "Hey, let's watch an Alien movie." I was like, "Yeah, I haven't seen the Resurrection." He's like, "Oh, let's watch Resurrection." And I was watching it, and I was like, "Okay, Winona Ryder is in this. Okay, what is happening?" And every step of the way, I was just yelling at the TV because I had no idea what was happening. Like, I didn't get spoiled on it. And then at the end, I was like, what is this creature? And now it's like my all-time favorite, like, dumbest thing a movie has ever done. And I love it so much. It's so terrible. Because I do like Prometheus and Alien Covenant. Like, I don't think those are bad prequels. Like, I liked Prometheus quite a bit. So
I liked Prometheus.
I think it's really good.
I haven't checked out Covenant. But I need to. Let me load up my HBO Max right now.
But yeah, Alien is my favorite. Resurrection is my least favorite.
Alien's like the best, or at least when I was going back and rewatching him, I was like, Alien's the best one. Aliens has some really awesome, like, memorable scenes. You know, like we were talking about the person begging to die that's like stuck to the wall. Seeing the
Game
Queen.
Game over, man. Game over.
I mean, it's iconic in its own right, really.
Exactly. But yeah, as far as like the vibe or the tension all the way through, there's not a ton. It's not nearly as tense as just dealing with one alien on the ship.
Exactly. It is. Again, like, one is a horror movie, two is an action movie. And like, it sometimes in my head feels hard to compare them almost. Like, obviously, same character, same universe, same creature, but they just feel so stylistically different. it sometimes in my head is hard to like pick one that's better than the other just because they're coming at the material from two very different angles.
Well, and the sequel is sort of what James Cameron did in the 80s too, right? Where like Terminator was a slasher, and then he goes and does Terminator 2, which is this big gonzo action movie. And that's kind of what happens with Alien and Aliens. I mean, yeah, he didn't direct the first Alien, but he takes and he's like, I'm going to make it into a big blockbuster action movie.
Yeah, we're going to sell some toys.
Oh my God, I bought all of the Alien toys when I was a kid. I love those things.
Oh my God. Do you still have them?
I don't, unfortunately. My parents threw them away.
Oh,
dude, we had some of those too. Yeah.
Isn't it funny to think about the toys you had as a kid and you throw them away and then you're like, wait, fuck. Unlike Beanie Babies, who I hoarded those and they are worth literally nothing and still sit in my childhood bedroom.
Yeah, but I was not the kind of kid to like take care of my collectibles. So if I did have the Alien Queen, it would just be beat up.
That's true. I think I was the same way. Like I don't know what it was.
It's cool to own them still.
Exactly. Just have them. Well, so do we want to wrap up and give this a rating out of 5, guys?
Sounds good.
All right. So, Terry, how many milky androids out of 5? How many seminally milky androids out of 5 do you give Alien? I keep saying the word milk and feel a little bit nauseous now, so I might now have an aversion to milk.
It'll be canon for you now, too.
What a gross word.
It really is. When you think about it, I mean, yes, if you say words all like constantly, it sort of starts to lose meaning. But like milk, it just it sounds gross.
Okay, we have to stop talking.
All right, I'm not going to beat around the bush. This movie is a 5 out of 5 for me. It is consistently one of my favorite movies of all time. It will always be on. I mean, I got to look if it's on my Letterboxd now as my favorite movie, but it is almost always one of my going to be in my top 4 of all movies. And partly it's because of the way that it sort of opened me up to horror in a way. I consider this movie and A Nightmare on Elm Street my sort of kind of gateway into like modern / adult horror. And I think this film tackles interesting subtext. It tackles interesting themes. It's intense. It's scary. It does something that is iconic. It does something that had never been done before. This movie is perfect for me. It is a 5 milky androids out of 5. Today, yesterday, always and forever. This is one of my favorite movies. What about you, Mary Beth?
I agree with you on all accounts here. It's a 5 milky androids out of 5. This is an all-timer for all of the reasons you said. And every time I watch this movie, I've seen it so many times at this point, but it's always fun. I never will get tired of it. There's always something new to see on the screen or something to hear or something to understand about the world. You know, this Ridley Scott creates such like a deep thing with this movie, from the characters to the world to the monster to just everything about it. And it is just like an amazing cinematic experience that I am always happy to share with somebody, either for the first time or for the millionth time. And it's just always like watching it for the first time.
Hell yeah.
So, okay, we've got 2 5s right now. Zach, how many milky androids out of 5 do you give Alien? You have the final
2 out
word.
of 5. No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
No, this thing, I agree with you guys. 5 out of 5. Yeah, what if I was just like 2 out of 5? I brought you guys a big turd. I just want to talk about it. No. 5 out of 5.
We've had those before, but this is not a turd. If anyone called Alien a turd, I'd kick them out.
This movie, like, really has held up, and it is one that is like a surprisingly modern, like when you revisit it. You know, it looks amazing too for being shot when it was in the 70s. It is one of those, when you look at the release date, you're like, oh, this came out like 85 or something, you know, like, or at least, you know, when you're younger you do something anyway, but like,
yeah, exactly.
You don't realize like how much more ahead of the game this thing was, and how it's got so many like classic elements to it, like that. Just such it's such an American classic. Like all the things we've talked about, all different scenes that are like the chest bursters are like an American icon now. You know what I mean? They're like something like a classic thing that people reference. And it's, I like I said, just 5 out of 5. This thing kicks ass.
Hell yeah, I couldn't say better myself.
Hell yes.
Yeah, I'm a man of very sophisticated words. I would say this thing kicks ass, rocks cocks, and
in my critical opinion, this movie fucks.
Fucks heavy.
This movie fucks heavy. That's how I'm going to describe this from now on.
Hell yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Zach, for joining us to talk about Alien.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, where can our listeners find you, and what do you have that you'd like to share?
Oh, man. So check out my movie, 15 Things You Didn't Know About Bigfoot. Number 1 will blow your mind. Just search it and find the trailer, and if you like it, then check it out. Let me see. We have like a website. I should probably know what this is, but what's the website?
Probably.
Cranked Up Films is our distributor.
Also, to selflessly plug, both me and Terry both wrote reviews about it on Gaily Dreadful and Daily Grindhouse, and both loved it. So if you want to give us some clicks too and read our articles.
Yes, you guys have championed my movie from the beginning, so thank you very much for that. I would
thank
just
you
say
for making a good movie about Bigfoot.
Thank you. Thanks for watching the damn thing. I really didn't think anybody was going to watch it.
It was a pleasant surprise coming out of Chattanooga. You never know what you're going to watch, and I'm like, Vice Guide to Bigfoot, what is this going to be? And I loved it from the very beginning.
I was so fucking excited. I saw Bigfoot and found footage, and I was like, I am in my element. So,
just Google my movie, 15 Things You Didn't Know About Bigfoot, and man, I'm on like Twitter, but it's just like my personal account. I'm Secret Grandpa. Like, people ask me, they're like, where can they find you? And I'm like, I'm Pimp Pirate on Instagram. I don't fucking know. If you just want to see photos of me like hiking.
Looking for Bigfoot.
There's some good hiking photos for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So thanks for having me, and thanks for letting me plug my movie.
Hell yeah.
We're very excited to let you plug your movie. All right. So everyone, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. What was your experience with Alien, and what is your favorite Alien movie? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please stay safe out there. But most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.